Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the massive chamber, feeling very small. The walls around her stretched up so high that she could not see the ceiling. They were made of some kind of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. The floor beneath her feet was smooth and black, like looking into deep space. She was alone, but not really alone. 12 shapes surrounded her in a perfect circle. Each one was different. Each one was alien. Each one represented a species that had ruled the galaxy long before humans learned to make fire. The chamber was built inside a space station that orbited a neutron star. Elena could feel the strange gravity pulling at her bones. The air tasted metallic and made her teeth ache, but she stood straight and kept her face calm. She had trained for this moment her entire life. To her left floated the Zephyrian delegate. It looked like a storm cloud made of lightning. Blue and white electricity danced across its form, crackling and snapping. When it spoke, its voice sounded like thunder rolling across the sky. Elena had read that Zephyrians were made of pure energy. They had no solid bodies, just organized lightning that could think. Behind the Zephyrian stood something that hurt to look at directly. The Chronari delegate appeared as shifting geometric shapes that folded in on themselves in impossible ways. It was made of living silicon and metal, and its thoughts moved faster than human computers. When Elena tried to focus on it, her eyes watered, and her head began to hurt. The largest being in the room was the Veltar representative. It stood 3 times taller than Elena, and looked like someone had built a person out of black metal and living tissue. Parts of its body moved and changed shape as she watched. Tubes and wires grew from its arms and connected to ports in its chest. Its face was hidden behind a mask that reflected Elena's image back at her like a mirror. There were 9 other aliens in the chamber. Each one was stranger than the last. Some floated in tanks of liquid. Others existed as clouds of gas held together by force fields. One looked like a tree made of crystals. Another appeared to be nothing but a shadow that moved independently of any light source. At the far end of the chamber, on a raised platform, sat the oldest being Elena had ever seen or imagined. The architect was a mountain of living crystal that pulsed with inner light. It had been alive for over 2 million years. It had watched entire star systems be born and die. When it spoke, reality itself seemed to bend around its words. The architect's voice filled the chamber, like the sound of continents shifting. Human delegate, Elena Vasquez of Earth. You have been summoned to answer for the crimes of your species. Elena kept her hands at her sides and her voice steady. I am here to listen and respond as needed. Your species has violated the primitive species containment protocol, continued the architect. You have expanded beyond your home system without permission. You have established colonies in 3 star systems. You have built ships capable of faster-than-light travel. You have done all of this without seeking approval from the Galactic Council. The Zephyrian delegate crackled with increased energy. For 10,000 years, we have maintained peace through order. Younger species are contained until they prove themselves worthy of joining galactic civilization. Humanity has shown no such worthiness. Elena nodded slightly. She had expected this. Earth's expansion had been noticed. The Chronari's impossible geometries shifted and folded. When it spoke, its voice sounded like mathematics being spoken aloud. Analysis indicates that human expansion follows aggressive patterns. Projection models suggest continued violation of established boundaries. Recommendation: immediate containment or elimination. Other delegates began to speak. Each voice added to the chorus of judgment. Elena listened to them describe humanity's crimes. She heard them list every ship Earth had built, every colony they had established, every rule they had broken. The aliens had been watching humanity for decades, cataloging their every move. Every move. Finally, the chamber fell silent. The architect's crystal form pulsed brighter, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The Galactic Council has reached a decision. Humanity will retreat to its home system within one solar cycle. All colonies will be abandoned. All ships will be recalled. All expansion will cease. Number 4. The ancient being paused. And Elena felt the weight of 2 million years of authority pressing down on her. If humanity refuses to comply, the Galactic Council will consider this an act of war. The combined fleets of 12 civilizations will move against Earth. Your species will be eliminated completely. This is not negotiation. This is fact. Elena looked around the chamber at the assembled beings. She saw power that could reshape worlds. She saw technology that could move stars. She saw species that had mastered forces humans barely understood. Any one of these civilizations could probably destroy Earth without much effort. All 12 together represented more firepower than existed in human imagination. The silence stretched on. Elena knew they were waiting for her response. They expected her to beg for mercy. They expected her to promise that humanity would obey. They expected fear. Instead, Elena smiled. It was not the careful diplomatic smile she had practiced in training. It was not the polite expression she wore during negotiations. It was a real smile. Warm and genuine, and completely unexpected in this chamber of judgment. "Thank you for explaining the situation so clearly," she said in a voice that carried no trace of fear or worry. "I understand exactly what you're telling me. May I respond?" The architect's light pulsed in what might have been surprise. "You may speak, human." Elena's smile grew wider. "I appreciate the warning. We'll be ready." The chamber erupted in chaos. The Zephyrian's electrical form blazed brighter, sending sparks across the crystal walls. The Chronari's geometric shapes spun faster, creating a whining sound that made Elena's ears ring. Several other delegates began making noises that the translation system could not interpret. Elena stood calmly in the center of it all, still smiling. She waited for the noise to die down. She had expected this reaction. In fact, she had counted on it. The architect's voice boomed over the chaos, demanding silence. Gradually, the other delegates settled down, but Elena could feel their confusion and anger, like heat, radiating from their forms. "Explain yourself, human," the architect commanded. "You have been told that your species faces extinction. You respond with gratitude and confidence. This suggests either madness or ignorance." Elena nodded respectfully. "Neither, honored architect. It suggests preparation." She took a slow step forward, her hands clasped behind her back, in a casual pose that somehow commanded attention. "You see, I've spent most of my life studying each of your civilizations, learning your histories, understanding your capabilities, preparing for this exact moment." She turned to face the Zephyrian delegate directly. The being's electrical form crackled with what she had learned to recognize as impatience. "Your people achieved faster than light travel by learning to ride the solar winds between stars. You built ships that could surf electromagnetic currents across the galaxy. It was beautiful work, elegant, and efficient." The Zephyrian's form flickered. "Your point? Primitive?" Elena's smile never wavered. "My point is that in all your military history, you've never fought an enemy that didn't use energy-based technology. Your weapons are designed to overload power systems. Your defenses are built to redirect electrical attacks. Your entire military doctrine assumes that your opponents will fight the same way you do." She moved to the Chronari delegate, whose impossible geometries were shifting more rapidly now. "Your species perfected quantum computing 30,000 years ago. You can process battle scenarios faster than most species can even think. You can predict the outcome of a conflict before the first shot is fired." The mathematical voice of the Chronari cut through the air like a blade. "Correct. Analysis shows human military capability as negligible compared to any council member." Elena nodded. I'm sure your computers are very impressive, but they all share one fatal flaw. She paused, letting the silence build. They assume that everyone else thinks logically. They assume that all species make decisions based on survival, probability, and rational self-interest. They assume that when faced with impossible odds, intelligent beings will surrender. She walked toward the Veltar representative, whose biomechanical form was adapting to her presence, growing sensory organs to better observe her. Your people are masters of adaptation. You can evolve countermeasures against any threat within hours. You can survive in environments that would kill most life forms. You can literally change your biology to match any challenge. The Veltar's mask reflected Elena's face back at her, as it spoke in a voice like grinding gears. Adaptation is survival. What is your point? Elena stopped walking and spread her arms wide, addressing the entire chamber. My point is that all of you, for all your power and wisdom and technology, have made the same mistake. You've assumed that humanity is just another species like the ones you've dealt with before. You've assumed we'll play by the same rules you've been using for millions of years. The architect's crystal form pulsed with deeper colors. State your meaning clearly, human. Elena's expression grew more serious, though her smile remained. Honored members of the Galactic Council, you are about to learn something that isn't in any of your databases. Something your quantum computers haven't calculated. Something your adaptation protocols haven't prepared you for. She paused and looked each delegate in turn, meeting whatever passed for eyes among these ancient beings. You're about to learn what it means to fight a species that considers impossible odds to be a starting point, rather than an ending point. The chamber fell completely silent. Elena could hear her own heartbeat in the quiet. She could feel the weight of 12 civilizations' attention, focused on her, like the gravity of a star. Humans don't surrender when faced with extinction, she continued, her voice carrying clearly in the crystalline space. We adapt. We evolve. We find ways to turn our weaknesses into weapons and our disadvantages into opportunities. We've been doing it since we lived in caves and fought predators with sticks and stones. The Zephyrian crackled with agitation. Empty words. Primitive boasting. Doe. Elena shook her head. Not boasting. Warning. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small device. It looked crude compared to the advanced technology surrounding her. Just a simple metal rectangle with a few blinking lights. This is a human invention called a holographic projector. Very basic by your standards. But it's going to show you something that I think you'll find interesting. She pressed a button on the device. Light filled the air above her head, forming shapes and colors that resolved into a three-dimensional image of Earth's solar system. But it wasn't the solar system that the Galactic Council remembered from their surveys. The hologram showed Mars with massive structures buried beneath its surface. It showed the asteroid belt transformed into a fortress, with weapons platforms hidden inside what looked like ordinary rocks. It showed Jupiter's moons converted into military bases. It showed Earth itself, surrounded by orbital installations that hadn't existed during the Council's last reconnaissance. While you've been watching our official expansion, Elena said quietly, we've been busy at home. The Veltar's biomechanical form was growing new sensors, trying to analyze the hologram. Impossible. Our surveillance would have detected such construction. Elena's smile returned to its original warmth. Your surveillance looks for things it recognizes. It looks for energy signatures and construction patterns that match known galactic standards. It doesn't look for humans digging tunnels with primitive equipment and building weapons out of materials you consider worthless. The chamber erupted in noise again, but this time it sounded different. Less angry, more concerned. Elena let them process what they were seeing before she spoke again. You wanted to know humanity's response to your ultimatum? She said, raising her voice over the commotion. Here it is. Thank you for giving us time to prepare. We've put it to good use. The hologram continued to rotate above Elena's head, showing details that made several delegates lean forward for a better look. The architect's crystal form darkened to deeper shades of blue and purple. Colors that Elena had learned indicated deep thought or concern. "Explain these images," the architect commanded. "Our sensors show no such military buildup in your system." Elena gestured toward the floating display. "That's because you're looking for the wrong things. Your sensors are designed to detect advanced civilizations building advanced weapons. They're not designed to notice primitive humans doing primitive things with primitive materials." She pointed to the image of Mars. The hologram zoomed in, showing vast underground complexes carved directly into the planet's rock. "We didn't build these facilities with your kind of technology. We used machines that run on chemical fuel and human workers with hand tools. We carved these bases out of solid rock over the course of 50 years. One tunnel at a time." The Chronari's geometric form spun faster. "Analysis indicates massive energy expenditure for such construction. Detection should have been inevitable." Elena shook her head. "Only if you assume we used energy the way you do. We used solar panels that look like ordinary rock formations. We used geothermal energy from Mars's core. We used human muscle power and simple machines. None of it showed up as the kind of energy signature your sensors were programmed to notice." The display shifted to show the asteroid belt. What had appeared to be ordinary space rocks were revealed to be weapons platforms. Massive railguns were built into hollowed-out asteroids. Missile launchers were disguised as mining equipment. An entire fleet of warships was hidden inside what looked like a collection of space debris. The Veltar's biomechanical form was growing more sensory organs by the second, its adaptive biology trying to process the implications of what it was seeing. The resources required for such construction exceed human economic capacity by several orders of magnitude. Elena laughed, a sound that seemed strange in the serious atmosphere of the chamber. "You're thinking like a galactic civilization. You're thinking about building everything at once, with the best materials available. We thought like humans. We built everything slowly, over decades, using whatever we could find." End quote. Our Reezer. My pawn. My pawn. We 3 stills 2-5. Our Reezer Lime. She pointed to the asteroid weapons platforms. "Those railguns aren't made from advanced alloys. They're made from iron and nickel we mined from the asteroids themselves. The power systems aren't exotic matter reactors. They're simple fusion plants built with technology we've had for 100 years. The targeting computers aren't quantum processors. They're just very good at doing one specific job." The chamber was quieter now. The delegates were beginning to understand that they weren't looking at a primitive species trying to copy advanced technology. They were looking at something completely different. "But this is still not the real revelation," Elena continued. The hologram changed again, showing something that made several delegates recoil in what might have been shock or disgust. The display showed human ships, but they looked nothing like the sleek vessels that galactic civilizations preferred. These ships were built like bullets, all armor and engines with no concern for elegance or comfort. They had no energy shields, no advanced defensive systems, no sophisticated weapons arrays. "We call them kinetic kill vehicles," Elena explained calmly. "They're designed to do one thing: accelerate to a significant percentage of light speed and ram into their targets. No energy signature to track during their approach. No shields can stop simple momentum. No computer can calculate a defense against something that follows the laws of physics instead of the rules of galactic warfare." The Zephyrian's electrical form was crackling with what Elena recognized as confusion. "Suicide attacks. Primitive and wasteful." Elena's expression grew more serious. "Not suicide attacks. Drone attacks. Each of those ships has a crew of 0. They're controlled by artificial intelligence that doesn't care about survival because it was never alive to begin with." The implications of this began to sink in around the chamber. The Chronari's mathematical voice cut through the silence. "Mass production of single-use vessels indicates unlimited construction capacity. This contradicts all economic models. Elena nodded. It contradicts your economic models because you're used to building things that last. You build ships to serve for thousands of years. You use materials that cost enormous amounts of energy to create. We build ships to be used once and thrown away. We use materials we can dig out of the ground with simple tools. 2. The hologram shifted one more time, showing something that stunned the entire chamber into complete silence. The display revealed human colonies, but not the 3 systems that the Council knew about. It showed dozens of settlements scattered throughout the galaxy, hidden in systems that no galactic civilization would ever consider inhabitable. While you watched our official expansion into 3 systems, Elena said quietly, we sent generation ships to places you'd never think to look. Dead systems with no valuable resources, binary pulsars that emit deadly radiation, rogue planets drifting in interstellar space, brown, dwarf stars that barely qualify as stars at all. The architect's crystal form pulsed with rapid changes of color. Impossible. Our surveillance networks monitor all systems within our sphere of influence. Elena's smile returned. Your surveillance networks monitor systems that might be useful to galactic civilizations. They look for planets that can be terraformed, systems with rare elements, locations that offer strategic advantages. They don't monitor the galaxy's garbage dumps. She gestured toward the hologram, which was now showing images of human settlements in environments that looked completely hostile to life. Humans, working in radiation suits, around a pulsar. Underground cities on rogue planets lit only by artificial suns. Orbital habitats around brown dwarfs that provided barely enough energy to sustain life. We've been building a shadow civilization for 3 generations, Elena continued. A network of colonies connected by slow ships that take decades to travel between systems. Ships that look like space debris and communicate using methods you consider obsolete. An entire civilization that exists in your blind spots. The Veltar's adaptive form was now covered with sensory organs, its biology desperately trying to process information that didn't fit any known patterns. The survival rate in such environments would be catastrophic. Elena nodded grimly. Yes. About 40% of our colonists died in the first generation. We consider that an acceptable loss rate. The chamber fell into a silence so complete that Elena could hear the distant humming of the station's life support systems. She looked around at the assembled delegates, seeing their various forms of shock and confusion. Honored members of the Council, she said finally. You asked for humanity's response to your ultimatum. Let me be completely clear. We've spent the last 50 years preparing for this war. We've built weapons you can't detect, using methods you don't recognize, in places you don't monitor. We've created backup civilizations in environments you consider uninhabitable. She paused, letting that sink in before delivering her final point. The architect's crystal form had shifted to colors Elena had never seen before. Deep purples and blacks that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. When the ancient being spoke, its voice carried undertones that made the entire chamber vibrate. State your meaning, human. What advantage could a primitive species possibly possess that 12 galactic civilizations do not? Elena turned off the holographic display and walked closer to the center of the circle. She moved slowly, deliberately, like someone who held all the cards in a game that others didn't even know they were playing. The advantage of being underestimated, she said simply. The advantage of being considered primitive and predictable. But most importantly, the advantage of remembering something that you've all forgotten. On one. The Zephyrian's electrical form crackled with impatience. Elena stopped walking and faced the assembled delegates. You've forgotten how to be truly dangerous. All of you. Your civilizations are ancient, powerful, magnificent. But you've been playing by the same rules for so long that you've forgotten there are other ways to fight. She gestured around the chamber. Look at this place. Look at yourselves. You've created a perfect system where no one can completely defeat anyone else. You have energy weapons, so you developed energy shields. You have quantum computers, so you created quantum encryption. You have adaptive biology, so you built adaptive countermeasures. The Chronari's geometric shapes folded in on themselves in what might have been confusion. Logical development. Advancement requires balanced escalation of capability. Elena shook her head. No, that's not advancement. That's stagnation. You've created a system where everyone is equally powerful, which means no one can win decisively. It's elegant, but it's also a trap. She began walking around the circle again, addressing each delegate in turn. When was the last time any of your species made a genuine breakthrough? When did you last discover something completely new, instead of just refining what you already knew? When did you last surprise yourselves? The chamber was quiet. Elena could see the delegates processing her words, and she could tell that some of them were beginning to understand what she was getting at. Humanity offers something that your perfect balance has cost you, she continued. We offer chaos. We offer the unpredictable variable that will force you to evolve again. Not as enemies, necessarily, but as a catalyst for growth that your civilizations desperately need. The Veltar's biomechanical form had stopped growing new sensors. Now it was processing the ones it had, trying to analyze Elena's words like they were a form of data. Explain the tactical advantage of unpredictability. Explain. Elena smiled. I'll show you. She reached into her other pocket and pulled out another device. This one, even simpler than the first. It looked like nothing more than a small metal cylinder with a red button on top. This is a human invention called a dead man's switch, she explained. Very simple technology. As long as I keep pressing this button, nothing happens. If I stop pressing it, or if something happens to me, it sends a signal. Several delegates shifted nervously. The architect's voice carried a note of warning. Human, what signal does your device send? Elena's expression grew serious. It tells every human colony, every hidden base, every concealed weapon platform to implement Protocol 7. Protocol 7 is our response to the extinction of humanity. If Earth falls, if our colonies are destroyed, if our species is wiped out, then Protocol 7 ensures that the galaxy learns a very important lesson about the cost of making humans extinct. The Zephyrian blazed brighter. You threaten mutual destruction? Elena shook her head. Not mutual destruction. Asymmetric destruction. You see, we've spent 50 years studying not just your military capabilities, but your civilizations themselves. We know where your homeworlds are. We know which systems are critical to your infrastructure. We know which trade routes your economies depend on. The holographic projector activated again, this time showing a map of the entire galaxy. Red lines appeared, connecting various star systems. Elena pointed to them as she spoke. Those red lines represent what we call the galactic nervous system. The communication networks that connect your civilizations. The trade routes that carry essential resources. The diplomatic stations that maintain your alliances. The research facilities that develop your technology. The map zoomed in on specific systems, showing detailed tactical analyses. Elena continued her explanation with the calm precision of someone discussing the weather. If humanity is destroyed, our hidden colonies don't try to rebuild. Instead, they spend the next 1,000 years systematically destroying every critical piece of infrastructure that keeps galactic civilization running. Not your military bases, which are well defended. Not your homeworlds, which would be genocide. Just the boring, everyday systems that you take for granted. The Chronari's mathematical voice carried a note of what might have been respect. Analysis indicates effective disruption of galactic commerce and communication. Damage assessment. Catastrophic, but not immediately fatal. Right? Elena nodded. Exactly. We don't want to destroy your civilizations. We want to send them back to the Stone Age. We want to break the connections that hold your perfect system together and force you to rebuild from scratch. She pointed to specific targets on the map. Communication relay stations that have operated for hundreds of thousands of years. Automated mining facilities that extract resources from dead systems. Trade stations that handle commerce for entire sectors. Research stations that store the accumulated knowledge of multiple species. The Veltar's form was adapting again, growing what looked like weapons systems before forcing them to retreat. The resources required to maintain such a campaign over millennial timescales exceed any rational cost-benefit analysis. Elena's smile grew wider. Now you're starting to understand. Rational cost-benefit analysis assumes that the people making decisions care about profit and efficiency and survival. Protocol 7 assumes that some things are more important than being rational. She turned to face the architect directly. Honored Ancient One, let me ask you a question. In your 2 million years of existence, have you ever encountered a species that considered spite to be a valid military strategy? The chamber fell silent again. But this time the silence felt different. It felt like the quiet before a storm, when the air pressure changes and everyone knows that something big is coming. Elena continued speaking into that loaded silence. Humans have a saying, if you're going to kill me, make sure you do it right. Because if I survive, I'll spend the rest of my life making you regret it. She looked around the chamber at the assembled delegates. So let me be very clear about humanity's position. If you want to test your fleets against our defenses, we're ready. If you want to see whether your ancient wisdom can overcome human stubbornness, we're willing to find out. But understand that this won't be the kind of war you're used to fighting. The dead man's switch clicked steadily in her hand. This will be the kind of war where everyone loses. But some people lose so badly that they wish they'd never started it in the first place. The silence in the chamber stretched on for what felt like hours. Elena could see the delegates communicating with each other through methods that human technology couldn't detect. Flashes of light passed between the Zephyrians. The Chronari's geometric shapes synchronized their rotations. The Veltar's biomechanical form grew new organs that connected wirelessly to similar organs on other delegates. Elena waited patiently, still holding the dead man's switch. She had said everything she needed to say. Now it was time to see whether 50 years of human preparation would lead to war or something else entirely. The architect was the first to break the silence. The ancient crystal being's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, as if the chamber itself was speaking. Human Elena Vasquez. Your species presents us with an unprecedented situation. In 3 million years of galactic governance, no primitive species has ever demonstrated such thorough preparation for conflict. Elena inclined her head respectfully. We had good teachers. Every military engagement in your recorded history is available in the galactic database. We studied them all. Every military is a Vader. The Zephyrian crackled with what Elena had learned to recognize as grudging admiration. You studied our victories to learn our capabilities, but you studied our defeats to learn our weaknesses. Elena nodded. That's correct. And we discovered something interesting. In all your conflicts, both sides always followed the same basic rules. Energy weapons versus energy shields. Quantum strategies versus quantum countermeasures. Adaptive organisms versus adaptive responses. You've been playing an elaborate game of rock, paper, scissors for millions of years. The Chronari's mathematical voice carried a new tone, one that might have been curiosity. Analysis request. What alternative strategies did human evaluation determine? G, 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 G. Elena smiled. We decided not to play your game at all. Instead of trying to beat you at something you've been perfecting for millions of years, we chose to change the rules entirely. She gestured toward where the holographic display had been. Every weapon we've built, every strategy we've developed, every plan we've made is designed around one simple principle. Do things that galactic civilization has never seen before. The Veltar's biomechanical form had stabilized into something that looked almost curious, with sensory organs arranged in patterns that suggested focused attention. Clarification requested. Human species appears to embrace tactical disadvantage as strategic advantage. Elena laughed. Exactly. You've just summarized human military doctrine in one sentence. We take our disadvantages and figure out how to make them work for us instead of against us. She began counting on her fingers. We're primitive, so we build weapons that don't require advanced technology. We're young, so we think of solutions that haven't been tried before. We're small, so we hide in places no one thinks to look. We're supposedly rational, so we make plans that depend on doing irrational things. The chamber was warming up again, both literally and figuratively. Elena could sense the delegates' confusion, beginning to transform into something that might have been professional respect. But here's the most important thing. Elena continued, her voice growing more serious. We're not actually asking you to surrender to humanity. We're not demanding that you acknowledge us as your superiors. We're not trying to take over the galaxy. The architect's crystal form pulsed with deeper colors. Elena took a deep breath. This was the moment she had been building toward. We want exactly what every young species wants. Room to grow. But we're offering something in return. Something that your perfect galactic peace has cost you. She looked around the chamber, meeting what passed for eyes among these ancient beings. We're offering to be the chaos that forces you to evolve again. We're offering to be the unpredictable element that breaks up your stagnation and pushes you toward new discoveries. The Zephyrian's electrical form flickered with what might have been interest. Explain. Elena smiled. Think about what you've learned about humanity just in the last hour. We've shown you construction techniques that your sensors couldn't detect. We've demonstrated weapons that your defenses weren't designed to stop. We've revealed strategies that your computers didn't predict. She paused, letting that sink in. And we did all of that, with primitive technology and limited resources. Imagine what we could accomplish as partners, instead of enemies. Imagine how much faster your civilizations could advance if they had to adapt to human unpredictability on a regular basis. The Chronari's geometric shapes were rotating in complex patterns now. Hypothesis. Human inclusion in galactic civilization would function as evolutionary pressure stimulus. Elena nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. Competition drives innovation. Challenge drives growth. Right now, you're all so perfectly balanced that no one has any reason to improve. Add humans to the mix, and suddenly everyone has to get better just to keep up. The Veltar's biomechanical form was growing new organs again, but these ones looked different. More like tools than weapons. Symbiotic relationship potential. Humans provide disruption. Catalyst. Galactic civilization provides growth framework. Elena could see the idea taking hold around the chamber. These beings were ancient and wise. They understood the value of what she was offering, even if it made them uncomfortable. So here's our proposal, Elena said, holding up the Deadman's switch. Make humanity the 13th member of the Galactic Council. Give us equal status and equal voice in galactic affairs. In return, we'll share our techniques and strategies and perspectives. We'll help you rediscover what it means to be surprised by new ideas. The architect's voice carried undertones of what might have been amusement. And if we refuse? Elena's smile grew sharper. Then you'll learn about human stubbornness the hard way. Protocol 7 remains active until humanity is either accepted as equals or extinct. Either way, the galaxy becomes a much more interesting place. She looked around the chamber one more time. The choice is yours. Do you want to explore the potential of chaos as partners, Or do you want to experience it as victims? The delegates began communicating again, but this time Elena could sense a different quality to their interactions. They weren't planning for war anymore. They were negotiating the terms of an unprecedented peace. The architect spoke for all of them. Human Elena Vasquez, the Galactic Council, will require time to consider your proposal. Such a decision cannot be made hastily. Elena nodded. Of course. Take all the time you need. But understand that while you're deciding, human colonies are growing, human technology is advancing, and human preparations are continuing. Every day you wait, we become harder to predict and more difficult to contain. She clicked off the deadman's switch and put it back in her pocket. When you're ready to talk again, you know how to contact us. We'll be here. Somewhere in the galaxy. Probably in the last place you think to look. Elena turned toward the chamber's exit, then paused and looked back at the assembled delegates. Oh, and honored members of the council, thank you for the warning about your intentions. It gave us exactly the motivation we needed to become something you'd never seen before. As she walked away, Elena could hear the chamber erupting in discussion behind her. 12 ancient civilizations were about to discover what it meant to negotiate with a species that considered impossible odds to be just another word for opportunity. The galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place,